Hello and welcome everyone to today's second Social Work Alumni Film Festival. My name is Amanda Decker and I am the Senior Development Officer for Constituent Relations and Advancement Operations here at the USC Suzanne Dworak-Peck School of Social Work. I oversee alumni relations, professional development, and annual giving. And we're so excited today to bring to you 5 documentary films and works in progress from our alumni and community. It is the culmination of a 10-month-long journey that these filmmakers have taken since last September with Dr. Rafael Angulo. So we are really excited today to share with you these films. I did want to share a few things. So this is a culmination of a 10-month event. We also have a graduate level course. And today, you will see where you're joining us. You have the opportunity to give back to the graduate level course. Gifts to the graduate level course will provide much needed film kits for our students here in our social work and media course. We're pioneering social work and media, and it will enter its 18th year in the 2021-2022 academic year. You'll also see brief descriptions on some of the films from today on that website. And then you will also be able to see the film festival from our students that took place in May. So today is a fundraiser, and we hope that you can see it in your heart for some generosity for our students. So if you need any help, you click the Give button in the right-hand corner of your screen, and it will pop out a slide-out form. It won't interrupt the video, so you'll still be able to see the video. But we hope that you will help us reach our goal of $3,000. We're about a fifth of the way there. So any help would be very much appreciated. So without further ado, I'm going to pass my MC duties over to my colleague here, Dr. Rafael Angulo.
Professor Angulo, good afternoon, and wherever you may be. I understand that a colleague of ours is in Europe, a student actually in this class. And so we welcome her if she is on board. I know it's rather late right now, but my name is Rafael Angulo, and it's truly a pleasure to be present in this moment with both my collaborators, that is fellow filmmakers, along with those who support them, whether that be family, friends, colleagues. I'm also welcoming faculty from the School of Social Work, as well as students and alumni who are present and wanting to watch films that other social workers and cultural influencers have engaged in and made and will be presenting this afternoon. For me, this is truly a dream come true to be able to see in vivo the completed works and works that are in progress from my students. There was a time when many people did not see the connection between filmmaking and social work. Filmmaking was sort of an established presence that had its own sort of system, many times very corporate in nature. Hollywood sort of is defined as that. And then as we began to see cameras become less expensive, we began to look at filmmaking as really not only in the hands of the bourgeoisie, if you will, but also in the hands of the proletariat, or if you will, the common folk. And so now with the emergence of the smartphone and prosumer cameras, we have the capacity to create stories of our own and to be able to find sort of different distribution methods that are not just Hollywood, but using methods in social media, along with other avenues by which to distribute our film and ultimately have some sort of impact. This class, I think, differentiates itself from other film classes in that we really begin to hone in on how will I have the greatest amount of impact in the documentary that I have made. And so there's a longer shelf life, if you will, than just the completion of a documentary. Many of the students in this particular class desire that they go to film festival, want to create their own website, want to be able to share their documentary with other potential partners in the human services realm. And so media and the evidence is very clear that documentaries well distributed with a really strong sort of social media presence and platform from a systemic perspective are able to generate not only a lot of viewing, but also in terms of changing minds and hearts. And that's what we are intending to do here. And that's one of the questions that I'll be posing to each of these wonderful emerging filmmakers and beautiful creative souls in terms of how they decide and how they plan to sort of move forward with their documentary so that it has greater impact. So I'll be making further comments in between each of these particular films, but really this is the afternoon of my students. This is the afternoon that after, almost 10 months of preparing and pre-production, production, and post-production, they are now in the process of being able to share their piece. Before we begin with my colleague, Kathern Paige, I really want to give tribute also to other members of the class who are currently in production or in post-production. And I want to make mention of Sylvia, Jennifer, Lynn, Terry, Virginia, Flor, Monique, LaShawn, and Justin, who are either in the middle of production or currently attempting to finish editing. As they and the current class will tell you, documentary filmmaking is not an easy task. It really requires you to be a generalist in both production and casting and scouting and being able to really secure these sort of remarkable stories, but it also engages in production and in composition and in aesthetics, as well as editing, and there's music and there's titling and there's a wide variety of other things that happen as a result of that. So the task is exhilarating, challenging. My students have cried, have laughed, have thought, my God, I'm not going to be able to make this happen. But everybody finishes their documentary in their own time and in their own way. And so I just really wanted to recognize and honor my particular students who are not showing their film and recognizing them as well. So without further ado, I want to invite my colleague, Kathern, to introduce, and I see you have your wonderful main character. Please, Kathern, please introduce your film, and then we'll go ahead and view it.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone. And I just want to give a shout out to all my colleagues that I was in the class with for the past 10 months. I've learned so much from all of you, and it's been such a joy and an honor to work with all of you and get to know you. And I'm really looking forward to our collaboration on future projects down the road. I'm here with the namesake of the film, LaVeta. Her story, Get Out, Get Free, a story of courage and survival. She's going to share with us in a testimonial the trials and tribulations of the past experience she had with domestic violence. And we hope to motivate and give respect to anyone that's ever been a victim to get out and get free, as LaVeta says.
In a small town on the Atlantic Ocean, a woman named LaVeta lived a life of domestic violence and fear. This is her story.
The first time I ever experienced domestic violence, I was 5 years old when my grandfather bust my grandmother in the head with a brick. That's the first time I ever seen a man hit a woman. Then it accumulated onto my father. I say the abuse started with my father, and when he beat me down, Mama had to keep me home from school because the whelps was open on my arms and my back. If the buckle slipped out his hand, he kept hitting me with it. And he just kept on until Mama had to, he would lock the door. My stepmother had to kick the door in and stand in front of me and say, "Don't hit her no more." I ran away to go to my birth mother, and she put me in the car and brought me right back. So that's made me feel like she didn't want me either. So after I became an adult, after I grew up, some of the men that I attracted was abusive men. I attracted, oh good Lord, abusive. It's like crazy. He pursued me. He was cunning. He did everything that a woman wanted. While we were dating, I was put on a pedestal. I got my nails done, my hair done. If I wanted my toes done, he did it. While we were dating and he wasn't living in my house. He'd come over, I cooked dinner, we watched movies together. He goes back to where he was living at. He paid all my bills. I made more money than he did. He was upset about that. Women not supposed to make money than bills. I made more money than him. But he made sure he paid all my bills. Then the abuse started. I paid the bills here. Slapping me, punching me, would never hit me in my face because he told me I have to look at you. I never hit you. My arms would be bruised. My chest, my back would be bruised because I can cover that up. He would never hit me in my face because he said I have to look at you.
In 1997, I lived here in the back apartment, 2 bedrooms, with my oldest daughter. I let the devil in. It was the worst nightmare I ever been through. He abused me right back in the back of this place here.
when I asked that joker to move in and he moved his stuff in, he moved his attitude in with him. He moved the demon in with him. He moved the abuse in with him. All that pain, all that baggage that I didn't know about, I didn't see, that was lined up right behind him. He drug all that in my house. So, why I never called domestic violence hotline, because growing up from a child all the way up and seeing this, I thought that was normal. You supposed to get your butt whooped if you don't do what your man say. That's the way my generation was raised. The way I was raised and the things I have seen, that a woman submits to her husband. And back then, with my grandpa and my grandma and my dad and my stepmom, I saw the abuse. I mean, and the women stayed and they took it. I was off that night. I was in the bed, sleep, and I could not catch my breath. I felt my life slipping away from me. I was choking. So when I went to grab my throat, I felt his hands. That's when I opened my eyes and he was on top of me, choking me. And I'm trying to ask him, what is going on? Then he threw me behind the bed. I pushed him off me. He threw me behind the bed. He grabbed me by my hair. He dragged me across the room. And when he dragged me across the room, I sat up and on the floor, and then that's when he came and snatched the telephone cord and he wrapped it around my neck. And I did like this and I grabbed it. My instincts told me to grab that cord because he finna choke the mess out of you. Because that joker had death in his eyes for me. And I put my hand up and he was trying to, I could see him in my mirror in my on my dresser. He was pulling with all his might. But I was holding on with all my might. I don't know where I got that strength from, but God gave it to me. Thank you, Jesus. And then he finally knew he couldn't choke me, so he turned it loose. When he turned it loose, I was laying on the floor and he got in the bed and turned the TV on and put his foot on the back of my neck and he said, "Bitch, don't move. You're gonna sleep there all night." And I don't know, but this strength came from the tips of my toes all the way up to the top of my head. And I threw that joker off. I knocked his foot, and when I grabbed his foot, I slung that joker. And when he hit the floor, he was running because I was running too. He knew I was going to get them butcher knives. I said, enough is enough. I went in the room, got everything he owned, slung it out the front door. I didn't care where it went, who stole it, or what. I said, this is the last night you put your hand on me. This is the last night any man put their hand on me. And I meant that. And then nobody else do it.
Each time a woman stands up for herself, without knowing it possibly, without claiming it, she stands up for all women.
Get out. Get free. Let someone know what is going on. If you need help, I needed help, but I didn't do it that way. But you got to get the help. Because once you get free, girl, you ain't going to take nothing from nobody else. Once you say, I'm done, I'm not going to let this happen to me no more, you're going to be free. You're going to fly like a bird. Girl, your wings going to soar like I don't know what. But The first stage is get out.
This is out to each and every one of you. One of my favorites from Sam Cooke. And it goes something like this. I was born by the river in a little tent. Oh, just like the river I've been running ever since. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change is gonna come. Oh, yes it will.
Kathern, LaVeta, let me just begin first, Kathern. You, and obviously this will be a first for many, you were a former police officer. You've
Yes.
been there, you've done that. I'm wondering if there's a connection between your law enforcement work, and obviously after that you became a social worker, but there must be some connections here, law enforcement, social work, and violence against women. I'm curious if you can kind of put the puzzle pieces together and why the creation of this topic at this time.
Yeah, thanks so much, Professor. There was actually one little piece that didn't make it on the screen at the very end after the copyright. There was a message from LaVeta. So hopefully people will watch it all the way through the whole credits because she comes back on screen with a short message for everyone. So the creation of this is kind of long time in the making. As you said, when I was a police officer, I did see, calls that involved domestic violence. Actually, the very first one I ever saw was when I was on a ride-along before I was ever even a licensed law enforcement officer. And it involved a tremendous amount of abuse and shocking to see up close and know that you can't really affect change when you're just on that side of the law. So all I could do that night was to watch what was going on. And then even when I did become in law enforcement, arresting someone is always traumatic, whether they deserve it or not. It's a traumatic moment for people. A lot of times it's the first time someone's ever done anything against the law, and that includes domestic violence. Some of the cases we had were first-time offenders of this. So it was hard not being able to feel like I was making any difference. So when I went back to school to get the master's degree, I really felt like I wanted to concentrate my efforts and research on domestic violence. So that was my main research during those 3 years of grad school at USC, was trying to figure out a way to educate people. I feel like as it was back in the 70s and 80s, we weren't supposed to talk about it. It was supposed to stay behind closed doors. It was supposed to be for family only. And now since the 80s and the 90s, thanks to Ellen Pence and many other people, we've brought it out into the forefront and people are not afraid to talk about it. Victims and survivors are more willing to talk about it, but it's still a very daunting task to go through what LaVeta has gone through with all the interviews that her and I have done. She is the bravest person I've ever met in my life. And to be a survivor of that kind of abuse is so harrowing. And we should all thank her so much, because her goal when we started all this back in 2016, she was part of my final project for USC, was if we could just save one woman's life by telling her story, and that would be all that would matter. That's all we would care about, is just to save one person.
Yeah.
LaVeta, you are the hero in this documentary. What is it like to hear you, or to see and hear your story? And that in many ways you are now leaving a legacy to thousands, millions of women who will watch this, and even prior to the film, obviously you were speaking on their behalf. What's that like to kind of see yourself in a documentary format?
Well, when Kathy asked me about this, when I was in my 20s, when all this happened, I had told myself, I want to put my story out there because women shouldn't be abused like that. And they picked the women that is more vulnerable. And I wanted to put my story out. So when after all these years, I never talked about it ever. And then when I met Kathy, me and her became best friends. And she said, I want to do a documentary on you, on your story about domestic violence. And I said, boom, y'all, the light went on. I said, this is my time to put my story out there because I want to help a young woman to not to be abused or even murdered. I just want to let them know it's okay to get out. It's okay to be free. Once you be free, you're going to be happy. And it's okay. And I told Kay, I was just talking to her and I was like, girl, you don't know half of my story. That was just a little teeny bit. I got a big story to tell. But
yeah.
She can only put on what she could.
Kathern, I think it would be important to be able to share that last piece. So if we can get off and mute ourselves,
Okay.
Amanda's going to share that final shot, and that. So apologies for that.
Anybody listening to this, I hope this can help you out.
And that's the point. That's
Right.
the documentary, is to be able to help you out.
That's right.
And your message, I think, is really important, LaVeta. I'm curious, Kathern, you use water a lot to begin it, to end it. I'm curious why, as a director, you decided to use sort of water as a metaphor.
We're in Florida.
Right.
We're in Florida.
We're in Florida, so there's water everywhere, Professor.
We're in Florida.
But honestly,
And
water,
I love fishing.
she loves fishing. And when we met, that was kind of one of our things. We both love the water, and the water can be your friend and it can be your enemy. And so in an artistic way, we both decided we're going to use water for this documentary because the tide can turn on you. A storm can come up out of nowhere. You can be
Right.
on a sunny ocean 1 minute and you can be in the middle of a hurricane the next. And that's what it's like in these domestic violence relationships. These women go in thinking their husband or their partner loves them and that they would never hurt them. And that's what we all feel. We feel
Right.
like our partners and our spouses would never hurt us. And when they turn on us like that, it's like a storm coming in off the Atlantic and it hits you, like blindsides you. So it really felt like a real artistic way to involve the ocean into LaVeta's story.
What a wonderful way of using that. I know also you used a lot of titles in your documentary to sort of move it forward. I'm wondering how you decided to use what particular titles in terms of stats and things of that sort. Kind of take us through how you thought about this.
Well, the storyboarding that you taught us was crucial. And I really learned a lot about storytelling and storyboarding. I mean, I have a background in journalism, so some of this did come naturally to me, but honestly, I never thought I could make a documentary. And I have to give the hugest shout out to my wonderful sister, Wendy Felton. I could never have finished this documentary without her. She taught me so much about the production end, and she was a taskmaster, man. These last few weeks, she had me on schedule. She had me down to the minute of what was due and what I needed to do for her, and her technical ability to help me weave the story with the titles and the music. It was just a remarkable thing to work with my sister on this, and I'm so proud of her.
Definitely. What happens next with this documentary? How do you want to use it? How do you want to distribute it? What kind of impact do you ultimately want to have?
Well, like LaVeta said when she first met me, we want to save some lives. I mean, we really want to save some lives. And if we can have domestic violence shelters show LaVeta's video, if we can get it out there to women that aren't even in the shelters yet, that's really the key, is how do we get this to women that are contemplating leaving, but they're afraid. We want her motivational documentary to help women just get out, because once they get out and they get help, it all starts to make sense for them. When they're trapped in that house and the door's closed, and many times they're cut off from their family, their friends can't reach them anymore. The abusers, one of their big tactics is to cut
you off from
you
your
off.
family and friends.
Yeah.
Yes, and
So-
he did that to me.
And he did that to her. So we just need to get them out the door. And I know some of my professors I've shared this with, who are geniuses when it comes to domestic violence counseling, is just getting them out the door is that first step. So if this documentary can get those women out the door and either to their family's house and then onto a domestic violence counseling and shelters, we really believe we can save some lives, and that's what we want to do.
So you'll be using platforms such as DV shelters, social service agencies that work with a lot of women and obviously men as well,
Right.
who have been victimized. That's one of your sort of approaches to be able to sort of spread this documentary sort of far and wide.
Yes, definitely. And we may do a couple of film festivals just because it would be nice to help with the pushing out the information if we could get in a film festival. But I know it's tricky and there's a long line of great documentarians out there. So we'll just be grateful to save some lives, but we'll also be honored if we were able to get into a film festival.
Yeah. Kathern, LaVeta, thank you so very much for being courageous, LaVeta, and Kathern for not giving up. You know, I know that there were some moments for everybody. Oh my God, I can't do this. This is way too hard. I don't have the time. And you were able to finish.
That was me. She was persistent. That was me.
Thank you so much, both of you, Kathern and LaVeta. Many
Thank
blessings
you.
to you, and thank you for sharing your documentary.
Thank you, everyone. And thanks for the support, and best of everything to all my fellow colleagues. And I really hope that you'll come on board and join my Social Change Warriors team. I would love to see you all in my program.
Awesome. Thanks, Kathern and LaVeta. So there you see an example of a social worker, former police officer, former journalist, who decided to really tell a story, and still the impact of this particular documentary, she's still working it through in terms of who she will be connecting with, and really having an opportunity to be able to share this message far and wide. I want to bring on board student Amber Bradley, social worker. Amber, come on board.
Hello.
Hello, Amber. So I remember when you pitched your documentary idea, it was about a location that I had never heard about. So this is a work in progress. Take us through as introduction, sort of what we're going to be seeing, and then we'll go ahead and share the piece.
Okay, sounds great. Okay, so my documentary is titled When the Well Runs Dry, and it is about Allen Allensworth. And Allen Allensworth developed a town near Bakersfield to help free people who were former enslaved and to escape the Jim Crow South, and to be able to have a safe haven for them to be able to thrive as a Black community, socially, economically, and politically. And so this documentary will explore the racial inequalities throughout the development and dismantlement of California's first Black thriving town and its present day strife. In 2014, I traveled to Allensworth and I toured it, and I was just intrigued by this thought that there was a Black ran town in California and it was thriving, and now nobody lives there and it's not a town anymore, it's a state park. And what happened to it? Why is it no longer here?
They were told that the land was rich farmland. When they got out here, the land was hard, alkaline grounds. They weren't rich. So my father said that they were cheated.
This would have been one of the Black towns that made it. Colonel Allensworth was born into enslavement, and we know what all that entails. So after suffering through enslavement, after he was freed, he started a restaurant with his brother in St. Louis. They eventually sold the restaurant, and he made a decision to move to Los Angeles under the assumption that due to LA being more progressive, things would be better. It would be less discrimination and oppression. But upon his arrival to Los Angeles, he realized that was not true. So he made a decision that he needed to find a place for Black people to reside where they could have economic freedom and safety and just live their lives in peace.
I want to give to you the copy of the letter that my father, Henry C. Singleton, and this is a 9-page letter that my father wrote to me in the 70s. Allensworth at one time had a post office, 2 general merchandise stores, railroad station, a repair station for the railroad, bakery, blacksmithing shop, a barber shop, library, stables, auto hadn't taken over yet, hotel, drugstore, lumber yard, school, 2 churches, etc. After many years, people occasionally occupied by itinerant farmhands, people passing through for a few days while working in the grapes of Delano or the potatoes of Wasco or cotton, then go their way, unaware of the history of Allensworth. My father, it's in the letter. I don't go there anymore, it almost kills me. I lived there from the age of 10, 11. I know the history, the trickery, the ignorance, the application and devotion, the drudgery, the prayers and the failure. Why they want to make a state park out of it is beyond me, except probably as yet another example of Caucasian chicanery and Black ignorance and trust, Daddy.
Even the more popularized Black town, which is the Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma, it's just interesting how people are unaware of these towns and what they were able to accomplish in these towns and how these towns were diminished. It's one thing to not have been able to build from these Black established towns, but it's another thing to not even know about them and to not learn about them and learn from them and attempt to recreate them. Even though we're trying to be this post-racial society, how can we truly be a post-racial society if we don't have in our history books or in our schools lessons in regards to Allensworth and Tulsa?
His plan was not for this to be a historic park. His goal was for it to be a historic place, but not a historic park. So because the town was brought to his knees, it is now a historic park. That was not his idea. But now that it is, I think our mission is to make sure that people know about why this place existed, what brought this place to its knees, and keep the history of this place alive for future generations so that our generation and the future generations will know what can be done in spite of your circumstances.
My father said that they used to have a stop
in Allensworth. They had an actual stop where you get on the train, stop and go to Allensworth. He used to make trips with a wagon, make trips to the train station and pick up supplies and take them back to the store. That was one of his duties. He talked about that.
That was a major deal when the train moved that stop to Alpar. It was a huge impact on the town of Allensworth. So if you live back there, you load up your wagon, you get your crops to the train, it's not that big of a deal. But if you move it 10 or 12 miles down the road, or however far Alpar is, horse and buggy, that's a long way. So that brought the town, between that and the water, that brought the town to its knees. People can only take so much before, you're just on your knees or you give up. Many people started to move away.
The Singletons came from Kansas. Somebody came from Ohio. Why do people come from all these different places all across the United States to literally the middle of nowhere to try to live and thrive? Like, why do people do that? It's because they wanted social, political, and economic freedom. And that's the reason why towns were established.
They had pride, and they had plans as to what they wanted to do. I used to visualize Allensworth from listening to my father and and I said, if Allensworth had just been successful like the other towns following them, what would they have been like? And I had this little thing about 20,000 people, 20,000 people. They would have had their own school system. They would have had nice water coming in. They would have had libraries, parks. Their homes would have been so nice. But like my father said, they got along in many ways with the other towns around them. Okay, but they were just denied. But had they not been denied, it would have been a nice town.
To have been met with systematic racism. So Allensworth was in between mushy shores of Tulare Lake and then also alkaline soil. They made a contract with the Pacific Farming Company that they were going to receive water. And there were towns surrounding Allensworth that had the same amount of people, but they had double the wells. And whenever water became scarce, more water went to the more industrialized farms compared to smaller farms like Allensworth. If under contract, you're promising me this, even if you don't technically own the rights to the water, if we contracted one thing, you can't renege on the contract. If you're gonna lower the water, you gotta let us know. You gotta give us something in exchange, ethically. But when it came to Black development, there was no ethics.
It's Juneteenth, and we're physically, that when slaves were physically free from slavery, but we really not even physically free like that.
I had no clue what to expect today. I just knew I wanted to be here and open the store for the people who showed up in this heat. Today, State Park decided to put on the opening of the traveling Allensworth exhibit. So this exhibit travels around California, and back in the day, they had docents that traveled with the exhibit, and they would get dressed up in docent attire, and they would talk about Allensworth.
When I went there for Juneteenth, what I saw was that they're kind of working on like an honor system. There's nobody at the pay gate to stop people and say, hey, you have to stop here, pay your $6, and then you can park and tour the park. They're thinking that people are going to read these signs, but they're very small. They have like these little envelopes, and you're supposed to like stick your $6 in there, stick it in like the little post, and then rip off the ticket and then put it on your car.
So State Park does not have anyone manning the gate because there's not enough people that come to the park to make it worth their while to pay someone to man the gate. When you have 200 plus parks that you need to take care of, the ones that get the most visitors get the most attention. So if you have this little park out here in the middle of nowhere and it's not getting a lot of attention from the public, then, you know, sometimes money can be directed to where they feel it's needed most. Most of the people that were here today, it was their first time. So we have to figure out how to reach the masses. People come out here and they ask me all the time, why does Allensworth have to exist? Well, that tells me that they need an education on the history of all the things that happened from enslavement up into Allensworth and all of these other black towns, and the reasons why Allensworth and a lot of the other black towns did not survive.
Hearing the park ranger when I was there on Juneteenth talk about how just because you own the land doesn't mean that you own the rights to the water. And one thing that just really rubbed me the wrong way was ultimately stating the reason why Allensworth didn't make it is because Allensworth basically took on too grand of a task and didn't have all the resources and didn't have everything that he needed in order to thrive. And he just bit off more than he can chew.
And my concern is there's no one at the park that knows the real story as to what happened and why this place had to exist. And then there's differences in why it was brought to its knees.
It's not about trying to separate, but it's trying to enhance what could have been, like continuing to cultivate what Allensworth and individuals like him dreamed for. Just continuing on allowing Black people to thrive in this community because we have dedicated so much to America and we deserve to have our safe space and to thrive in this country and pass down our not just knowledge but also our assets that we've developed. Not just us being like, oh, here was this Black town and this is something that you should know. I'm passing down this knowledge. It's like, no, here's this Black town that we've cultivated and now it's up to the next generation to continue to build and cultivate it and thrive from what we've established, from what Allensworth has established.
It's up to us to keep it going. And so I'm encouraging my own daughters and friends of Allensworth to keep giving, contributing, to keep that history going.
It's Tulsa number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5. It's just a domino effect of a group of people not wanting another group of people to prosper because of the color of their skin.
Amber, so you are part historian, part investigator. You wrap up some of these roles. Did you intend to do that? Sort of tell me about sort of the process of how you thought about this documentary, because obviously as a filmmaker, you're looking at the past, obviously. But then you're making, if you will, conclusions about the current state of affairs here in America. I'm curious how this sort of, you shared with us in the beginning that you were in Allensworth in 2014, I believe. But then I saw you here sort of being part historian and part sort of investigator. Take us through sort of the process of wanting to tell this particular story, especially in relation that it's about the past impacting obviously the present.
Yeah, well, I think the investigator part I was not expecting to kind of take on. It kind of just happened amongst filming when I went for Juneteenth. And this is something that Sasha Bisco, who's the president of Friends of Allensworth, told me, but it really kind of just didn't dawn on me until I went there and I toured and I just heard different versions of the history of Allensworth. And so then that's when I started to kind of connect some pieces as to what's being told to people who visit the park versus some of the books that are sold at the Singleton cash store. And I initially just wanted to talk about Allensworth, and I just wanted to talk about this amazing town that is in California, and it was a Black established town, and I wanted to initially know about it, and I wanted others to know about it, and then that's how the documentary happened.
Yeah, in a time in which sort of critical race theory is being frowned upon by a certain, percentage of the population. I mean, there was very sort of critical analysis of what was happening then. And, you were talking about water, and you were talking about, these sort of natural elements that surround Allensworth. In many ways, you were sort of utilizing sort of critical race theory to explore some of the issues that brought the demise of Allensworth.
Yeah, that was not really kind of my intention to do, but that's just how the cards fell. So
Yeah, I'm curious. You're I don't know. I want to say 70% done. Maybe that's not a right percentage, but I'm curious. What else do you want to add? What else are you looking at? How do you want to sort of put this documentary further together in the next couple of months?
I would love to speak with somebody in regards to the assets lost in general in like Black towns like Allensworth, Tulsa, and just what was lost like financially. And also, continuing to keep up with the pay gate. And I spoke with Sasha this morning, and she was just telling me that they have meetings and they're trying to get people, the higher ups, to like listen, like we need these things. And it just kind of seems right now that things are their desires are falling on deaf ears right now. So it's just like it's kind of this continuation of an injustice. Like we're saying that we want these things and you're not listening to us. So I kind of want to hear out. I want to continue on with what's happening currently with the state park.
Yeah, I would imagine there's a lot more in regards to sort of Allensworth in terms of its story. I'm thinking about, the Japanese internment camps are in Central California. And there's a remarkable historical sort of analysis of these particular internment camps. And it seems to me, just as an outsider sort of looking in, Amber, that Allensworth can really provide a lot of lessons, not only about the past, but about the present. And that, what does that look like when you have a city, cities across the United States that begin to, from the inside and from the outside, begin to sort of fall apart? And are there any lessons to be learned, especially you as a social worker, being able to sort of look at, history and its impact in the present moment, when we have these gaps between rich and poor only widening, and we see sort of the issues related to the African American in particular, in terms of those differences, in terms of healthcare, education. Imagine an Allensworth library, Allensworth Unified School District. Like there's a lot of things that could have been, but didn't happen.
Allensworth wanted it to be a Tuskegee of the West. So Tuskegee University is a HBCU that's still running, and he wanted to bring that to the West. And his plan was to have an agricultural college. And I often think about that too. It's like, my grandmother was born in Bakersfield. So, if that town was still established, like, where would that, my grandmother had an amazing career, but it's like, where would that have taken her? Where would that have taken my mom? Where would that have taken me? Like, and so on and so forth. So definitely.
Well, thank you so much, Amber. I'm really looking forward to how this will sort of come together in its fine cut version. And I think this is a story that, like many stories with Black and Indigenous people of color, have been receded, outside the realm of history and the way we understand it. And I'm glad that you're bringing this story up. Much appreciated. Thank you so much, Amber.
Thank you.
Yeah. So as you can see, Amber, like Kathern, social workers taking on a new skill set, meaning filmmaking, to be able to tell stories about the past and about the present. And if there's any alumni here that are watching and maybe wanting to consider the development of a new skill set, this course will be offered again in September for an entire 10 months, where we meet once a month and really begin to hone in on not only the definition of documentary filmmaking, its history, pre-production, production, and post-production, and really taking on the cinematic. And for such a long time, there's been this divorce between the social worker and the artist. And what we are attempting to do is really to meld these two pieces together and to be able to say, wait a minute, you are a social worker, but you can also be a filmmaker as well. And being able to use that new tool set to be able to tell stories. So I really want to invite alumni and other change agents to consider taking the course and joining, if you will, this journey of creating something from nothing, bringing some sense of order out of chaos. And ultimately what Amber and Kathern and those you will be seeing in just a few minutes, they are storytellers through the visual and cinematic medium. So I want to bring on board my colleague, Anthony, sort of a cultural influencer, not a social worker, but he has influences in many ways through podcasts, and he's a writer. He's been immersed in theater, and definitely would love for Anthony to be able to provide his sort of introduction to the documentary and why he wanted to get it started in the first place. Anthony, please, introductions.
Thank you. Good afternoon, all. I wanted to do this documentary because, initially I started off wanting to do a documentary about a lot of the brutalization and the violence that gets, that gets handed to us, that gets sent our way as Black men in America. And I thought about it and I realized that the story I really wanted to tell was a more personal one. And the story I decided to tell was what happened after I received a diagnosis from my doctor about having very high blood pressure and really being close to the stroke zone. And my decision to challenge and change my behavior and what I could do in terms of my health, and making the decision to live to 102. So that's where this documentary came from.
Let's watch.
I went to the doctor. I've been having a lot of dizzy spells and wasn't feeling well and didn't know what was going on. As soon as they took my blood pressure, they were kind of freaking out, which kind of freaked me out. They couldn't believe it was so high and nothing had happened to me as of yet.
Sometimes there are conditions or diseases that have reached an advanced state. At times, I'm unable to treat them.
They make money off of us, so they're gonna keep you coming back.
They're not really trying to heal you. They're just trying to keep you alive so they can keep pumping the medicine. And I had no idea. That's what hit the switch for me.
And a lot of people gave me the same response, which was, well, what's the big deal, right? You're 52, you're Black, you're male. This should have happened 10 years ago. And in August, I decided, I think I want to try this experiment. September 1st, I'm gonna go vegan and plant-based. I'm not gonna have any meat, not gonna have any dairy, not gonna have any cheese, and I wanna take a 30-day window and see how I feel. I did it for 30 days, loved the way that I felt, and just never stopped, and that was almost a year ago. When I first heard about it and was introduced to it, I was like, well, wait a minute. That means no wings, that means no cheese sticks, that means no pizza. I grew up with people that liked to eat and liked food, right? And loved dessert. I don't remember a lot of talks about being healthy. I remember a lot of talks about food being good. I decided to make this my new healthy obsession, right? And I wanted to talk to people who had already done it, who had been doing it, not people who were fly by night, who were like, I think I want to try this, or I'm not sure.
My introduction to veganism was based on health. So like I grew up in Florida. I never heard the word vegan until I came to California. So the very first time I came to California, I was at my fiance's house. She was just my girlfriend at the time. We was talking about getting something to eat. And her parents said something and I was like, what? And then she was like, oh yeah, we're vegetarian. I was like, y'all are Black and vegetarian? I had never seen a Black vegetarian before. Why in the world would you be vegetarian? How y'all alive? And she said because she had got diagnosed with cancer. So she went vegan for like a couple months and the cancer is gone. And I was like, what is veganism and how does eating food make cancer go away? And then she explained to me like, there's studies showing that meat causes this, that, and the third. And I'm like, what? I had never heard that ever in my life. There's no way that this is real. I did inpatient physical therapy in the hospital. So I seen firsthand what happens when you got to get chest tubes put in because you've been eating whatever you want for 50 plus years. And now it's going to catch up with you. And just having to help people walk to the bathroom, people can't do anything on their own. And that scarred me right there. And I said, this will never be me. There won't be no 20-year-old helping pick me up out of the bed because I couldn't stop eating pork and all that every single day, heavily loaded with salt and all that other stuff.
One of the trends that I see is a delay in Black men coming in to do preventive medicine. So it's unfortunate that very often when Black men come in, it's because their wives or their girlfriends have made the appointment for them. And sometimes there are conditions or diseases that have reached an advanced state. So unfortunately, at times I'm unable to treat them because of the fact that the condition is at a point where there's only so much that could be done.
Was there one incident? Was there one event? What caused this desire to transform and do something different?
This is so embarrassing, but I was walking. I don't know if I was walking my dog at the time. I was walking. This was like 4 years ago. I'm like, I'm like breathing all heavy, and I'm like, I'm just, walking. And it was obvious I had gained like a bunch of weight or whatever. And I think that was it for me because I've always been an athlete. I've always been very active. I was like, dang, I can't even walk to the mailbox or whatever I was doing. I was like, okay, I need to make a change. And that's when I said I would go plant-based, and now I'm vegan.
I had a couple of friends who had recently gone vegan. and they made it seem so easy. And I was like, oh wow, like that seems kind of easy. Like I could do that. And I recently had stumbled across a blog that was called Young, Black, and Vegan, and I was like reading some of the discourse on it, and I wasn't disagreeing. I was like, oh yeah, they got a point. And I kind of just tried it one day, cold turkey, and I've just been doing it ever since.
I was 350 pounds as a pescatarian. I had already I'd begun refining my diet. You know, I stopped eating pork in like 1993, probably. I stopped eating beef shortly thereafter. By the time my first child was born in 95, I was, vegetarian. And at a certain point, I went and dabbled back with chicken for a minute, but that didn't resonate with me. And so here I am. I was a 350-pound pescatarian. But we began to substitute other things, lots of potatoes and bread and all that other mess, So, and I just realized that I had to make a change.
What I found statistically is that most of us don't die of natural causes. It's diabetes, it's high blood pressure, it's hypertension, it's obesity, it's stress, it's all these things that are preventable. So to me, when I decided that I was going to move on this health journey, it was about not wanting to die because of those things. Like I want to go because I'm just old. Okay, cucumbers, the tomatoes over there. Then behind you is pomegranate tree. There's tomatoes, gladiolas in the center, Swiss chard here on the ends.
Hello?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, sure can.
I'm working on this film about plant-based eating and eating healthy, and I was talking about, how you got me into it, and you've been with it since 2004.
I went vegetarian in 2004.
Okay, all right.
And I went plant-based last year. And we're saying a lot of the athletes are going plant-based now, and that's because and they're winning more games because of that, as opposed to eating the meat diet that they used to eat.
Right. The holidays came around, and because we're in COVID, it was easy to not necessarily be with a bunch of people and eat a bunch of junk. So I realized I was on to something when Thanksgiving and Christmas rolled around, and I had my plate of vegetables, and people were eating whatever they were eating, and I didn't feel like, oh, I gotta get some turkey, or I didn't feel deprived. I just felt like this is what I'm doing, right? And I'm doing it for a bigger issue, for lack of a better term, a bigger cause. And that's when I knew I was onto something, because Thanksgiving and Christmas came, and there was I wasn't eating ham, I wasn't eating turkey, I wasn't eating, gravy, and all this kind of stuff. And I was eating, I planned a meal for myself and then executed it. And I knew, I was like, yeah, I can do this. And that was about 90 days into it. And that's when I knew, I was like, oh, I can definitely do this. Overall, I felt better. My mind was clearer. I was able to move through problems and issues and challenges faster. I was able to figure out how to be more creative.
I'm Lisa A. Smith. I am a certified plant-based nutritionist, and full-time I teach how to use food as medicine to prevent chronic health challenges. And so just studying nutrition led me to discover that a whole food plant-based diet is the most optimal diet on the planet for longevity. And that was so important to me, because learning that, the top causes of death, especially in the Black community, heart disease, cancer, and stroke, can all mostly be prevented from lifestyle modification, was a game changer, because essentially we're dying from things that are preventable. We're not dying from things that we had no control over.
So I went vegetarian for my New Year's resolution. So January, February, March, I was vegetarian. And then halfway through March, I was like, this is kind of dumb. Like, I already can't eat anything. I might as well just be vegan. And then I was like, all right, let's get it. So what was that, March 17th or 19th? I went vegan, and I've been vegan ever since. So it's been 4 years now.
I consider myself to be an herbalist, meaning that I study plants, to understand not only the characteristics of those plants, but what makes them thrive. If we know what makes them thrive, we can understand what action they'll have upon the human body. Most of the things that people care about when talking about nutrition, we have absolutely no care for. We're not concerned with protein. We're not counting calories. Don't care about carbs. We're concerned with finding real food, natural food, that is going to be alkaline, that is going to be bioavailable, and that will easily assimilate to the body. That will bring about a different outcome from what most people are getting.
Liberation is in the choosing, and when we make choices, we find joy. When we feel confined and when we feel ourselves being constricted, right, that causes fear, it causes a trauma response, it causes sadness. So to let all of that go, to slice through it, to honor it, to look at it, to touch it, it freed me up. And when I started to feel freed up emotionally and spiritually, it also freed me up physically, right? And physically, I was able to feel joyful in my body, whether it's loving my body for the way that it is now that I'm like 50 and I don't feel and look the way that I did at 20. But when I let myself honor who I am, I can love my body differently than I did. When I can stand in my joy, when I acknowledge inside my body that something's bothering me, there's joy in that. I think before when I was full of rage and anger, my body felt tight and constricted a lot of the times, not realizing that a lot of the trauma that I had and a lot of the repression and rage that I had was physically inside me. So joy is being able to let that go and express yourself in any given moment in a way that's in alignment with your spirit, right? That's joy. That's happiness, that's freedom, that's liberation. And again, when you are in a body that's marginalized or historically ignored, when you can do that in the face of what's happening in the world, that's joy, that's revolution, right? That has an ability to shift the narrative, I think, for myself and I think for our communities.
My hope, my wish is that this will start a movement, that having dizzy spells and going to the doctor and realizing I want to change my health and then do this type of project will inspire other people to do the same thing. There are tons of things you can do for your health. There are things you can eliminate, there are things you can add. My goal is that 10,000 of us, 10,000 of you join me in taking on this challenge, and picking up the gauntlet and making your health, your well-being number one in your life, and not number one because so that you can help other people, but number one just because you're that important. So give the 10,000 Black men 3 tips in terms of them living to be at least 100, something they can do today, right now, when they're listening today. Can we give us 3 tips for that?
Yes, first start incorporating fresh fruits and vegetables into your diet. I'm not even saying you have to not eat meat yet, but just start incorporating those foods into your diet. Second, I would say to start switching certain things. You don't have to do it all at once, but instead of using dairy butter, get vegan butter. Instead of using, burgers made out of meat, get plant-based burgers. Start making those small switches. Mayonnaise, get vegan mayonnaise. Those small, simple switches can definitely help you in the long run to where everything you have now is plant-based. And third is to do as much research as you can to make sure that you are eating a diet with all the nutrients that you need so that you're not eating, junk food every single day, because that tends to happen to people because they're not fully educated on how much protein and carbs that they need to have in their diet. So definitely do your research, real research, and not research that, is funded by the dairy industry or funded by the meat industry.
I would tell them to try to have a diet which is low in fat, low in carbohydrates, and heavy in vegetables. So again, that's the plant-based diet. I would also tell them to make sure that they're exercising on a regular basis. In the African-American community in particular, we tend to be very spiritually based. So the role of the church comes in, or even for patients who don't have a church affiliation, having some sort of spiritual foundation tends to provide a lot of emotional and mental support. So I feel that having some sort of spiritual background or spiritual foundation is crucial to being able to live longer.
What I've basically learned is that I can save myself by changing my diet. I'm not alone. I'm not unusual in making this a priority. There are people all over the country, all over the world who look like me, who are making the same commitment.
I'm sanctified and holy, I shall not be moved. Sanctified and holy, I shall not be moved. Just like a tree planted by the water, I shall not be moved. Oh, I shall not be moved. I shall not be moved, just like a tree planted by the water. I shall not be moved.
I shall not be moved. Tell us about that final song there and what the messaging was that you were attempting after sort of giving us 15 minutes of intense sort of information in your story. You know, the way the documentary ends, I'm wondering, as a filmmaker, what were you attempting to sort of say through that song? What was the intentionality behind it?
The intentionality behind that song, I read a great book by the name of Love and Rage by this African-American male who's gay, and he's a spiritual leader. And he talked about, in the book, he talked about that song as almost a protest song about a person using that song to make a decision. I'm going to do this differently. I'm going to do it this way. One of the things I'm really obsessed with is behavior and beliefs and how they're intertwined and how they drive one another. So after reading that book, I dug the song out and listened to it. And I've heard the song before, but I really listened to it and I realized, oh, now I get it. I heard it differently for the first time in a long time. And I realized that the song was about making a decision to do it differently, to not back down, to be okay with standing alone.
You are an example of a lifelong learner, Anthony. Here you are, you know, over 50 and making a decision to change the way you eat, the way you live. And then what happens is you bring on all these wonderful people, you know, who have experts and from a very sort of Afrocentric perspective, if I may sort of utilize that. Obviously, it has impact on all people, but the fact that you invited all African Americans, it really seems for me a testimony of who you want to outreach to, who you want to touch.
Yes, my goal is to have, you know, when I was making it, I used something that you taught us in class. I used 5 different words to guide every decision we were making. So even with the interviews, I used the 5 questions. You know, am I hitting on one of these 5 points? And part of that was me also looking at, okay, I want to make something that's short enough to keep people's attention, but also short enough that will give people a reason to act. I mean, I could very easily have made it 3 hours, you know, but I know people are not going to watch something for 3 hours. So I was looking at it in terms of, you know, keeping in mind the attention span of people, the attention span of folks who may not be ready to hear it. I purposely wanted to keep it short, and I want to make sure that it gets into, you know, Black fraternities, Black sororities, churches, community centers, anywhere there are people that look like me who could benefit from some of this knowledge. And knowing that, yeah, you can, you know, you can do it differently. Being Black and male doesn't mean being medicated and dying early and being sick and being depressed. That's not what that means.
You talked about 90 days and sort of that transformation that happened in you. Obviously, you started 30 days. the research is very clear in regards to, developing habits that sometimes take 90 days for them to become ingrained and embedded in our behavior. When you begin to think about it, 90 days is not a long time, and it's a task worth engaging in, especially in relation to one's health, that one's life can be lengthened by 10, 15, 20 years. You want to live to be 102, my friend.
At least. Yeah, I've got a lot of things I have to do. There's a lot, I'm tasked with a lot. There's a lot on my plate and things that I want to accomplish. And I want to be able to, excuse me, I was telling somebody this last week. I want to be able to dance at my grandkids' wedding. So we got a long haul ahead of us.
Oh, may you live a long life, Anthony. Definitely. You are not a social worker, but you sure do act like one.
Thank you. I can play one on TV.
How do you want to spread this documentary? What sort of platforms do you wish to utilize? Do you wish to take it to festival? What's sort of your plan, strategic for impact?
Strategic plan for impact. I definitely want to take it to festivals. I want to get it out to as many festivals as possible. I definitely want to post it on my YouTube channel along with my other podcast so that people can, it'll be free. So anybody can see it whenever they want, it's not, they don't have to go somewhere to see it or pay necessarily to see it. One of the things I want to make sure that happens is I definitely want to do a longer version with less of me and more of the population, more of the community at large. I think I don't want to say that I've completely told my story, but I'm happy with the story that I told about me. And now I want to actually make it a movement and have other people tell their story and ask people the big question that was driving me, which was, do you know of any Black men that have died of natural causes? Because most of us don't. And that was a question that I asked everybody and nobody could answer that. So I'm not okay with that arrangement. So my goal is to do a longer version and to have a number of different people and even do, maybe even grab some people just like man on the street type of folks and ask them questions and kind of catch stuff like that on the fly.
Sort of final statement on my part. I really like the way you use the color green in your backyard or front yard, in the making of that salad. I mean, there was a juiciness, there was a color, there was a sense of, I want to eat that instead of meat or, that I really like the way you utilize that. Yeah, it was, there were interviews, but when you went into the green, it just, the documentary popped up even more for me on an emotional level. So I thought that was a really good choice. That salad that you were making looked damn good to me. Yeah, Anthony, thank you so very much.
Thank you
for the creation of this documentary, and best of luck to you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Our next work in progress is by a social worker named Susan Shing, who really wanted to tell a story about technology and its impact on those who are with the autism spectrum, and her own sort of personal connections with those who are challenged by it. And so, Susan, I'd like for you to introduce your work in progress, and we'll watch it.
Hi everyone. Thank you, Professor. So this work is called #Belonging. It just offers a glimpse into the lives of 3 young adults, Simon, Edgar, and Tammy, and their families. And they're sharing what it's like to live with multiple disabilities. And it also looks at the role of technology in their lives right now. So that's the draft, and I think that's kind of the heart of the piece. And so what I still have to add is this exploration, or really it's a societal inquiry into how can technology, as it's rapidly changing, how can it develop? So in this case, we're asking, could maybe there be the development of like a social media app specifically for young adults with disabilities, as a way for them to find each other, to connect and form community in a safe way online. So that's it in a nutshell right there.
I have autism, PTSD, and cognitive issues with thinking and processing things. Yeah, social embarrassment, or I don't know what the right word for it is.
Speech impediment, autism. This is hard for me to make new friends. Or this OCD, repeating stuff that we learn. And fear of learning new stuff, like writing to will the principle.
I have multiple disabilities. Some of them are Tourette's syndrome, PANS, ADD, ADHD, OCD, and anxiety, and learning disability.
With my mental disability, mine is just more like looking weird, or like sometimes making noises or doing things that are uncomfortable with people, rather than physical. But everyone's different, everyone's unique. I can't speak for anyone else. Mine is just feeling awkward every day, you know? Waking up at wrong times, not following through on my commitments, the usual for me.
Do you know what autism is? If I learn new stuff, I will repeat them. If I let them. If I don't, I'll just forget about it and you'll be like, I got to learn to teach my friend.
I guess some of them, like my Tourette's tics, affect, I guess, my thoughts and just makes me more anxious, and anxiety makes my OCD worse too. Yeah, the disability affects me a lot. Anxiety, happy, sad. You know, I basically have tics every day, but so I learn to deal with it now. It'll be easier.
Simon joined the family earlier than expected. I went in for one of my appointments with my OB/GYN, and they measured your the progress, and everything was a little small for the date. So they decided to induce. Yeah, that was about 4 weeks early of things. Yeah, and then things were pretty mellow in the beginning because Simon, you just slept a lot, and then things were like pretty good. But I think when we were about maybe 6 months old, you weren't meeting like what they call the developmental milestones, right? Like sitting up, and your muscle were kind of weak. You know, and certain things like the babies do, crawling and walking and talking, were slower than average. And so usually that's concern for all the doctors and family members. Yeah. And that was sort of the beginning of this journey. No, I think that we had a lot of different diagnoses and things that we were targeting, you know, either through special education or early intervention or therapeutic horseback riding and all kinds of modalities. And a lot of those things helped a lot. But then, you know, there was the mysterious part about sort of the behavioral, psychological stuff that didn't really fit, you know, with the person that we knew Simon to be. You know, that was more of a mystery because the onset of that was rather sudden and unexpected and not, didn't fit into a typical diagnosis of like psychosis or oppositional defiant disorder, any of the things where there were some pieces of it. But, you know, that inherently was not who Simon was or is. So anyway, after talking to a lot of people and kind of networking as one does and support groups, we came to the diagnosis of PANS or PANDAS. So it's associated, the S, PANDAS, associated with streptococcal infections. So strep throat, basically, which I think 90% of the population has been exposed to or had, whether symptomatic or not. And then that crosses the blood-brain barrier when people are young, and then it can cause this kind of chronic inflammation in the brain, and then it becomes autoimmune, where the body just keeps reacting to it and attacking itself, basically, and then causing psychiatric symptoms, or neurological, movement, tic disorders and stuff like that. And so that's what we really saw.
When we first met Thomas at 2.5, he barely walked because he had very low muscle tone from birth. And he had been removed from an earlier foster home due to lack of thriving.
Because they neglected him. They just left him in the crib and didn't interact with him, didn't feed him, except for with a bottle, which meant that he didn't really eat, right?
No.
He couldn't eat.
Thomas's problems were something to always look out for. He developed asthma pretty badly, and bad enough that he ended up in the hospital twice. And
apraxia.
Apraxia was his speech impediment, and the fact that he could, because his muscle tone in his face was so soft that it was hard for him to form letters.
Form words, he could.
Yeah.
But in general, because he didn't thrive for that 11 months in the foster home, he didn't even know how to point. He couldn't say he wanted that. What do you want? He couldn't point. He couldn't do anything. He didn't understand. His communication skills were like zero.
He really wasn't officially diagnosed other than mentally retarded. That was before the intellectual disability. But the mental retardation was on his list, besides the apraxia, low muscle tone throughout
Floppy.
his body.
He was born floppy.
He was born floppy and blue. And
whatever that chromosome thing was on his sheet.
Right. The chromosome thing we never figured out.
And so he had been in the foster system for ever since he was like 1.5 or so.
That's the story of Edgar. We brought him home. He was scared to death. Everything scared him. Everything scared him. A sudden loud noise, and he would run under something and hold his head, and it was impossible to get him out of there. We had to learn to manage that for him and learn to ease him out of it. It's still hard for him. Sudden loud noises are hard for him still. It makes him anxious and uncomfortable. But that was one of our first tasks, I think, with Edgar, was to make him comfortable and to make him feel loved. Because I think it had been a long time, if ever, that he had felt that way. Because no matter what the condition of these children is, they need to grow up in a home where they're loved. We took Edgar to, I can't remember what kind of doctor it was. Do you remember what?
She's a psychologist.
No. This was a medical doctor, and we were told this child will never read.
Oh, the geneticist.
Oh, the geneticist. He will never read. He's going to
Be short.
be tiny because he was very tiny when he was 3.5.
30 inches, 30 pounds for the next 2-3 years.
Yeah.
And that was from 3.5 to about 5, 6.
Well, he wasn't that little when he was 6.
He was. He didn't grow.
And what else was the bad news there? And then remember, he would never read or write. He will never understand mathematics.
No, not being able to attach.
Oh, he will not be able to attach. That was the hardest thing to hear. But obviously we didn't care.
He didn't realize it because he's very attached.
Yeah. And he does read, he does write, he can figure electronically, technically, he's almost a genius, I would say. With regard to photography and video, he not only has a natural attachment for it and a natural eye, but he also loves it.
I really like creating content, even if that just means going around and video recording myself, creating like a little story. I still don't kind of grasp, using technology like Facebook, Twitter, and then like talking bad about each other, and then it's publicly viewed, and anyone can know about your life, from all around the world, and it just getting into the wrong places and the wrong nets, and not the best choices for me as a young adult. And I ended up getting involved with people that were being kind of aggressive or mean or verbally aggressive, and I just was all like, I don't want them that to be put on my as my who I am. So
She did a lot of research. A few years back, she did a lot of research on China.
How the Great Wall was built, the emperors. They using
Also, you did a lot of research on the volcano.
Pompeii. That information. Like my mom, I think in Vietnam might be brainwashed by the people.
That you might be
brainwashed.
Brainwashed.
That means you Vietnam might believe what they believe. White supremacy.
Do you talk to white supremacists?
No, I'm saying the stuff I read, like Hitler's white supremacist, and I think you're afraid that I might on that. Are you?
I've never thought about that, Tammy.
I always thought about that when it comes to your inner thoughts.
She enjoys trying to figure out her main interest in World War II is Hitler.
And his friends.
And his wife.
And his friends.
And his friends.
Like Mussolini.
And her interest comes from her personal need to try to figure out why mean people do what they do.
Now they are really good.
Social media apps I like to use are mostly Pinterest and Gmail. I'm not sure if Gmail is actually social media since people just use it for work. Because you can follow people, search for things, follow, like pins, also DM people on it. And I like to use social media because to kill time and boredom and loneliness. Or not only that, but I think once you look at a certain amount of stuff and content, then you just bring it to why you're constantly looking at it. I know it's been too much on the computer when ticks increase and become more anxious when I'm on a lot more.
Work in progress, the social worker director, Susan. Wow. There's so much here and there's so much more that I want to grasp. That moment where the statement is made, make him feel loved. And there was silence. And it got like sort of ripped to the center of my core at that moment. The sense that what Thomas and Tammy and Simon want is to feel loved, to feel connected, to feel appreciated and honored for who they are. From the outside, they have been dealt sort of a bad card. But what the parents are attempting to do is saying, no, yeah, you're different, but you are loved in so many wonderful ways. And that was just a really prescient, beautiful moment when they began to sort of talk about this. How did you come to know Thomas and Tammy and
So Edgar, Tammy, and Simon.
Sorry, yes.
Well, I'll be transparent. Simon's mom, Tracy, is my cousin. So Simon is my second cousin. And that's kind of how this film came about. We were just discussing just the challenges every young adult goes through and how it is to be a parent. You're always going to support your kid, even when they're an adult. And then if you add disability to that, it just adds a whole other layers of complexity. And so we were thinking, this would be interesting. There's a lot to explore here. And so then just wrote up a brief kind of intro and sent it out within the local community. And then that's where I met Edgar, Tammy, and their mothers.
It's interesting. You began sort of the introduction with the use of technology and how can it really improve the quality of life, whether that be through social connections or other sort of avenues. You shoot from behind, sort of what we call over-the-shoulder shots, where they're looking at their iPhone or smartphone. And I thought that was a really good cinematography where, they are very much connected to their smartphones. Tell us how you think that technology may be a useful way of social connections and perhaps, making them feel loved and appreciated by larger circle of folks. Talk us through what you have in mind, or what the movement right now is in regards to finding apps or social media sites to work with those adults with disabilities.
I think that's it right there, Professor. You're hitting the nail on the head of how, I think we're all connected to our phones. It's almost like an extension of ourselves at this point. I want to say the latest neuroscience is that the parts of our brain that lights up in relationships, that's what lights up when we're, on our phone. And so the question is, how do we have balance using both tech, but how can our technology serve us as we are human, we live in community, and how can that serve? And so in this case, and this is something I've specifically discussed with Tracy, is that there's kind of a scarcity in apps specifically for teens and young adults with disabilities. And I was thinking about it, and I don't know for certain, but my guess is that I think that the apps that are out there, I don't know how much adults with disabilities have actually been involved in brainstorming and developing, and for some, even helping to create them. I wonder. And so really, this is the question that really got me going in this, is like, what if I whipped out my phone and all the apps on my phone were designed by individuals that had never had my lived experience? What would that be like? Would I actually really be able to fully utilize and engage in that app? It's questionable. And so that's what and then talking with them and hearing their ideas and their experience, I think that's kind of the hope here with this, to connect it to an online campaign to develop an app with their input of what they would like, what they would find helpful.
Yeah, I'm seeing here potential crowdfunding, for the development of this app, connecting with app makers. Here at USC in the School of Engineering, they have a wide variety of engineers who are working on potential apps. So not only are you involved, Susan, in the creation of a documentary, but also perhaps in the creation of an app that can have a life of its own. How do you plan to sort of finish this documentary? What's missing? How do you sort of plan to sort of carry it forward so that we have an eventual fine cut?
So there's kind of this third segment where, and I have, the clips, I just have to put it together. I went back to work, hold on. Just putting their ideas out there to hear directly from their experience, their ideas, their creativity, what feels important to them, what's calling to them. And then also their parents, right? That depending on one's disability, that can make navigating the online space a lot more challenging and dangerous. And so how to also incorporate the parents who are always going to love and protect that love. And is there a way to bring that to an app as well? So putting those ideas, putting it all together, and then connecting it with, some type of crowdfunding platform. And then in some ways, I guess being old-fashioned word of mouth, but through email, because I find that as the parents spoke to, in order to even figure out what was going on, what's the right diagnosis, they've had to have contact with so many providers, so many other parents, so many other caregivers. And so most of them at this point have really large support networks out of necessity and survival, and just spread the word that way. And if it resonates, I'm hoping, I think it will, then hopefully something really cool can come from it.
Yeah, I so much want to know more about Edgar, Tammy, and Simon. I would love for you to film sort of a day in the life of each of them. Tammy, fascinating in her interests in regards to World War II and Hitler, and sort of, the mother, I believe, provided sort of the subtext as to why she's interested. She hates to see suffering. She hates cruelty, and so that fascination that she has is just remarkable. And so as a filmmaker, I would love for you to be able to really bring us to enter the world of Edgar, Tammy, and Simon. They were talked about. We saw a little bit about them, along obviously with the app portion as well. But Susan, really looking forward to seeing how this all comes together in the next few months, and sort of the completion of this documentary. Thank you so much, Susan.
Thank you.
Our final documentary for this afternoon, and thank you all for your presence and your involvement in really hearing these stories, whether they be completed documentaries or works in progress. Really to appreciate what you all have done in terms of watching these documentaries. Our next documentary is Christina Chateau. Christina, there were some moments when you were doubting whether you can finish. Provide an introduction, and we will press start, please.
Thank you so much, Professor Angulo. I am Christina Chateau, and I'm so thankful to be here today and share my documentary with you. The title of my film is Achieving Greatness. Alita Sanchez is my heroine, and she is narrating the story about 3 families who have grown up in Santa Ana and how their lives were impacted and changed by pipeline programs and nonprofits. And how they have gone on to education and then given back to their community. So without giving too much away, I'm just so thankful to share this with everyone today.
Let's watch.
Thank you.
Community reach and culture. However, it is also a city where 87% of students in the school district come from low-income families. Approximately 45% of students in Santa Ana are English language learners. I was one of those students growing up in Santa Ana. I was an unaccompanied minor that migrated to the States at age 10. My sole purpose was to attend school and build a future better than what my parents will ever offer.
I mean, it's interesting
to see how different dreams take different shapes. So this is someone's new dream. It's great to be here and just remember the hard work that my mom put in here. I have so many memories, so many good memories, so many bad memories, and everything in between. But it's a good feeling. I think it makes you reflect on how hard you worked and how far you've come. I was thinking about going to college, and it took a lot of people around me, advisors, friends, teachers, to get me in the right mindset because I was losing hope. I think that my environment did shape a lot of who I am now and my decisions. It was frustrating to see that a lot of my colleagues that had potential were wasting it. And it was very difficult for me to understand why I was selected for like pipeline programs, or why was I selected to go on a field trip. I just kept focused on the opportunities that were provided to me.
I've come across so many of students that from an academic level, they're doing great, but there's things going on at home. For our students, they are sometimes the driver in the family, the babysitter in the family. They're helping with the bank accounts. They go to the hospital with the doctors, with the parents. So there's so many of these outside factors that a lot of other kids don't have to deal with, but this is part of their life.
There are so many stressors. If we're talking about kids from Santa Ana, where I grew up, I think a lot of it is very cultural because a lot of our parents are immigrants and we're the first gens that are born here. A lot of the issues surrounding poverty, I feel, don't allow a lot of our students to fully focus in school because they're still trying to meet their basic needs.
Lacking a lot of resources growing up, it made me feel limited in so many ways that I thought maybe I was incapable of achieving things.
After working in places like Long Beach, Santa Ana, it was obvious that if you were a student that was lower socioeconomic status, your opportunities were a lot less.
A lot of statistics that would be against me in my situation. I'm a first generation, I'm a female student, I'm an immigrant, and many things as a Hispanic in a city that's predominantly Hispanic as well, we're not expected to succeed at times.
For students that are first generation like myself, as a parent, you want your kids to be successful, but the how-to and the guide, it's not there.
My family was very rigorous in our academics. They really pushed us to do our best in school. And emotionally, I knew that support was there. We just didn't know how.
They are first generation here as a student, so we didn't know anything about how we can apply for college, how, as a parent, how we can help them.
Going into my junior year in high school, I did not know anything about college. My whole perception of college, since my parents didn't really go to college in here, it was just based through the movies. So I always thought it was basically old people sitting down in classrooms with like really old men writing on chalk.
I thought college was a luxury. I knew it wasn't something everyone could achieve, and I didn't know how I was gonna get there.
There are so many challenges because you're the first to speak a different language sometimes. You're the first to go to these galas. You're the first to step foot on a college campus.
I think if they're first generation and nobody has set a path for them, I think it's very important to talk to people that have done it before.
So definitely my older sister. Before her, I thought that it would be impossible for us to go to college. As soon as she got her acceptance letters, I saw how happy my parents were. I saw how happy everyone around her was. I just knew that it was also possible for me.
I was one of 3 Latina students in our entire class. And in the commencement, they recently announced that 999 undergraduates graduated from the School of Engineering. So to think that only 3 of us were biomedical engineers, it felt like a lonely journey. I didn't know how hard it was. Sorry.
There is a disparity that exists today. Not all students have the same access to education and opportunities to attend a 4-year college. However, there are nonprofits and pipeline programs partnering with school districts, and these partnerships are essential in providing services to all students.
Schools are part of a broader community. Sometimes we used to think about schools as just one physical structure, but they're actually part of a much broader community, which means other areas, other resources in the community are available through these CBOs or local nonprofits that sometimes we have to refer students out.
I think that the districts that work collaboratively with nonprofits are the ones that are more successful because no entity can do it all.
And if we can't do it here within the school structure and the confines and the parameters of school policy or school, regulations, then we can find those services outside of the school and still make sure that those services are being delivered to the child or the adolescent.
Yeah, it's been extremely important, our collaborations with Santa Ana Unified School District and Samueli Academy, because without them, it would be very difficult for us to engage with the scholars at the level they are in high school. We're all working together. That's the only way you're going to change what's going on in the world is if we all work together.
The partnerships between school districts and nonprofits like AISS are essential in changing the lives of first-generation students and their families.
Achievement Institute for STEM Scholars. That's what AISS stands for. The organization was founded back in 1997 by Paul Reardon.
Oh my God, I cannot even begin to describe all the things that ASS helped me with. I know for a fact that without ASS, I would not have been able to come here.
I thought college was going to be hard, but through ASS, I knew that I was going to have the support system that I was going to need.
They really emphasized that we needed to make what makes us unique stand out more. Like, we did not need to hide it. We needed to show to everyone else that this is what makes us important.
I was constantly reminded that I could do it, that I have the potential, yes I can, but not only that yes I can mentality, but that yes I will.
Scholars are referred to AISS by Santa Ana Unified School District, and then we also work with Samueli Academy. It's a charter school in Santa Ana, and just to qualify for the program, they have to have at least a 3.5 GPA, have some type of interest in math or science, and then be what they call economically disadvantaged students. The 2-year program consists of the first year being the career awareness, the second year being college readiness, and both years consisting of life skills or soft skills. And with the families themselves, what we do is we get them involved and we do parent workshops.
I would definitely say my experience at ASS has impacted my college career. They have provided me with the confidence and they gave structure to the discipline that I needed to form for the journey that I was going to take on in college.
I was quite very shy. Like, I didn't really take risks. So the biggest risk I took was interviewing for ASS.
I think that ASS helps each individual in their own special way. I feel like the best part about ASS is the support they gave the students. I've never seen support like that before.
ASS saw the potential in me to be able to come out of my comfort zone.
It's very unique. We don't see them as kids. We never ever mention them as children. We straight out call them, in every single meeting that we have, and the mentors, we call them scholars and young professionals.
I was a really shy guy. Debbie, she not only encourages you to speak up, she forces you to speak up. It's just that ASS just helped me break out of the shell that I did not even know I was in.
I don't think I would have even gotten to UCI without them. And I want to give that big portion of appreciation for them because they really set the pathway for me to even be here today. UCI mom. I so blessed. I can imagine doing this one without this amazing program.
I'm looking at the future of the scholar. That's where it starts. So there's all these different people that are touching the scholars. So what we do to help them will have an exponential effect on the community. Because if they're getting into college, now they know how to do it. So they're going to help their cousins and their siblings, and in some cases their own parents go back to college. Now we're changing that cycle of poverty.
It definitely takes a village to help a student grow, and it definitely takes a lot of resources to do so.
Each one of our stories is different. However, we all had the same goal. That is to graduate from a 4-year college while also having a positive impact in our families and communities.
The heart of the students, the scholars, and watching them come in and being so unsure of themselves do. I love to be able to see that look in someone's eye when they first come into the program of that unsureness, and then to see them, a year later after they've been in college and see a whole different person, and now they know that they can make it. So for me, that's the message, is to let students know there is hope. All you got to do is put in the hard work.
It is through these partnerships that we will continue to see students achieve their academic goals and give back to their community.
You would have a lot of students looking at a lot of opportunities and resources and getting to their potential. They're not just going to a job to survive. They're actually going to be able to do something that they can make a difference in, because these are leaders that we're working with.
You seeing yourself at a college campus and obtaining a career versus having to go to work every day, it's hopeful. I think it changes the dialogue, it changes the perspective, and I think that's what our first generation parents want.
I think if a dream comes true, and I feel like she got all this stuff because the program helped her to know how important it is to serve the community.
I came to USC just once and I spoke to my advisor, and it seemed so natural. I was very excited about the policy classes. I was very excited about implementing programs, and just having spent so much time in pipeline programs to help first generation students, I just thought the work is not done, and that would definitely be somewhere I would want to pick up with a master's in social work.
I think it's important for the profession of social work to attract people from the communities that they serve. For a lot of the reasons, giving back, people want to give back to the profession. They've had either not so good experiences in the communities that they've lived in or grown up in, or they've had relatives who haven't, and they want to change that. Or conversely, they've had really good experiences and they just want to continue with that trend.
This is exactly where I graduated. So that's where I walked the stage, right there in the back, and my family was all out here just waiting for me afterward. And it was a very emotional day for all of us, I feel, because when I graduated with all of them behind me.
What we're seeing a lot more now is first generation students who want to come back and give to the community, and one way to do that is to come to USC. It's literally their dream to be here.
If I could do one thing just in wherever I was, then it would be okay. Like even just the jobs that I've had, I know I'd made an impact. I figured, I'm not here on this earth to save the world. I'm here to just kind of get one step closer to empowering one more person.
I was a student who benefited from a pipeline program in Santa Ana that helped me achieve my dreams and goals through financial literacy, mentorship, and guidance. I want more people to be aware of nonprofits like AISS, so all students feel empowered, and they will be the ones who make a lasting change in their community.
AISS should be found by more people because it is such a great thing that I've come across. It's sad that other people don't get to have this luxury of this amazing program.
I've always believed that if we can get them the right support, then they can reach that potential, which that potential is what's going to change the world. And I would love to be able to help any student that wants to go to college.
My hope is that they really want to go to college, because I know a lot of students right now, especially with the pandemic, they are not wanting to go to college, and I want them to be more inspired to go into a STEM career to further their education.
I think for that program, my best wishes is that they can get more money, practical, more money, so they can get more kids in this program, and more families gonna be happy, and more families gonna help each other to rise this beautiful community in Orange County.
We think of ourselves as UCI legacy. The Beltran legacy is down here in Irvine, and it has definitely changed our family for the better. All I hope is that maybe one day we can reach to every single child in this nation, and every single person who's struggling, but they know that they can't get there. I very much believe in them that they can.
I hope that all students in Saddleback and all students in Santa Ana really believe in themselves, and that if they feel like their voice is not worth it, to just try it out, because their voices are so powerful, and the youth, more than anybody in this community, know where they need to go.
If all students were able to qualify for AISS, our community would not be the same. I think there is so much change that's needed to be made, and that change needs to be made now. If we want to move forward together, we need to be able to help each other out. And now that I'm graduated, it's all that's in my mind, to give back to the community that gave back so much to me.
I think any kid in Santa Ana Unified needs to hear that anything is possible. I think that there are so many adults out there willing to change our paths towards success. I think asking for help and talking to someone about the next steps will really shape your future. I say don't hold back, ask and demand help, and follow your dreams.
What's that like, Christina, to see it? I mean, you've seen it multiple times. Sometimes as filmmakers, we see it way too much.
Yes.
But now that perhaps those who you've invited to see, what is that like to sort of now see it in a public audience?
Well, I just had to compose myself because I was crying. So it's been a wonderful journey, and I feel so thankful that I was able to meet Alita, the Beltrans, Lizette, Debbie, everyone at AASS, and have this experience. It's and I think I wrote this in an email to you and Amanda. I went to USC for undergrad and for graduate school, and this class has been one of the best experiences I have had at USC. So thank you for that.
One of the great quotes that probably people didn't necessarily see that was in the classroom: less chat, more churn. Meaning, Okay, it's one thing to talk, but it's another thing to churn, to work hard, to move forward with it. And I'm curious, sort of, what lessons did you learn about the churning part of documentary filmmaking?
Oh my gosh, I made some notes earlier. You know, you're creating something in the chaos. So I have to say, behind me was a wall of Post-it notes in different colors, and I took them down for everyone today. So I wouldn't have them up. So my house would look a little bit nicer. But, you know, I did have to take different turns. And my heroine of the story, Alita, she has been with me from day one. Actually, Amanda was the one that introduced us. And so I knew I wanted her to tell this story. We thought we were going to tell another story, but we took a turn and she came with me and we were able to tell this story. And I think we did it really well.
I think it's fascinating how Alita and Lisette are MSW graduates from USC. You are an MSW from USC. And here, if you will, the three of you are telling this story about Ruth and Irene and Sam, and then there's Elena and Jessica, and who knows, I may have missed some other names. I don't think so, but the fact that you shot a lot of these interviews within university settings at USC, at UC Irvine, was there a purposefulness for that? You know, it seemed to me that if there was, because the whole point of AISS is to move them into college, STEM programs, etc. And I thought you just captured the beauty of the university sort of grounds and environment in a really sort of splendid sort of way.
Thank you. And that was my goal. USC has been my second home for many years. I feel so close with university. So to be up there and film up there with Professor Hayden, with Alita, and with Lizette, it was a wonderful experience. And then to go back to UCI with the Beltrans, where they had just graduated from, it was a beautiful day. So I was happy to have both of those settings. And at our universities, they're beautiful campuses. So I was very happy to do that.
I mean, I almost get the sense that that's a story in and of itself, the Beltran family.
Oh.
You know, in terms of these three children who go through AISS and go to university and graduate and move forward with a career, that's like a second story there, Christina.
So it's so interesting in creating this documentary. I have so many different stories now that I want to tell. So I want to do this again. And in meeting the Beltran family, I met with them last night. We did a private screening with Mrs. Beltran, with Irene, Ruth, and Sam, and we all got emotional. It was a wonderful evening. I feel so privileged that I was able to meet them and share this with them.
Yeah, yeah. How will AISS use this? How will you use it? What are the sort of the plans in terms of moving forward? Film festival, social media platforms. I'm wondering how you're planning on using it to get really more sort of buy-in into community partnerships.
So absolutely. So my husband jokes, he says, when I like something, I want everyone to like it. And I met AISS this past year through another organization I'm involved with. And I fell in love with not with impact giving, but with AISS. And I thought I want more people to know about it and what they're doing, not just the impact they're having on the student, the families, and then our community, and how our students are going back to their community and really making an impact. So my goal is for AISS to have more funding, for other nonprofits like AISS to have more funding, and see the importance of partnering with nonprofits in our community. So I'm happy to give this to AISS and let them use it for fundraising. And I hope to be involved with them because I think I know what they're doing. They are making a big impact in our community.
Hmm.
And film festival, yes, if that was an opportunity, I would welcome that, and just so more people can know about it.
Without a doubt. Christina, thank you so very much.
Thank you.
For this documentary. Really appreciate it. And so there you have it. 5 documentaries, some a work in progress, and just sort of our way of really elucidating, if you will, how social workers can really take on new tools of practice and being able to utilize it. You know, and here we saw so many sort of wonderful examples of intimate partner violence, of historical racism, of issues related to health, intellectual disability, and community partnership that builds up students to move forward. And one of the things that I think makes me happy, and I'll sort of end with this, is that many of the social workers who took this course begin to see themselves as, wait a minute, this is just one documentary. I want to create a second one. There's another story that I need to tell. And those who were not able to share their documentary, also have spoken to me about, this desire to consider themselves as storytellers. We don't necessarily think about me, a social worker, a storyteller. I'm in direct practice. I work in policy. I don't really have a lot of stories. I hear other people's stories. And I think what's really fascinating to me is that you have social workers who are now not listening to the story of others, but are telling their own stories, and becoming and embracing the storytelling paradigm within social work practice and connecting it with cinema. So I'm really proud of the work that we have seen. And once again, if there's alumni who are interested in this course, please. And if there are students, first-year students becoming second-year students or incoming first-year students, would love for you to consider taking the documentary filmmaking course that is taught in the spring of each semester. And before I hand it off to Amanda, I want to thank Amanda for everything that she does. She's a remarkable woman, and she puts this all together. And so this event could not have happened without her intrepid IT skills and sort of the vision that she has. So I want to hand it off to Amanda, but thank you to everybody who attended, and in particular to my students in this class. Amanda, please.
Thank you so much, Rafael. Thank you everyone who was able to join us today. You saw 5 films from alumni and community members who are trying to create change within themselves, within their communities, and this 10-month journey that everyone went on. And Rafaela, I was so glad to even go on this journey with you and this process. And I look forward to this next year and getting a new crop of alumni who are interested in the program. Again, today was a fundraiser to support the social work and media class here, our graduate level class here at the USC Suzanne Dworak-Peck School of Social Work. If you joined us on our mobile cause page, you can click the give button. It's either above or below, and make a gift to support us being able to provide the resources for our students next spring. So film kits, lighting, sound equipment, cameras. We really look forward to investing in our students who can then invest in themselves and their communities through the art of documentary filmmaking. So if you can find it in your heart, we would really appreciate it. If you are joining us on YouTube, there's a link in the description where you can make the gift. So again, thank you so much, everyone. It was my pleasure to host this with Rafael, and we really appreciate it. We will see you again next year, and we will also see you in the spring in May for our Student Film Festival for its 18th year. So thank you so much, everyone,